Hello and welcome to Chapter 5, Section 2. This is where we start learning to use the intercepts that we're creating. Now the y-intercept is where the line intersects the y-axis. When x equals 0, I want to know where that line crosses that y-axis. And when y equals 0, we want to use the x-intercept. We can use these two to graph our line so that we don't have to make a chart anymore. We use this when it's easier to manipulate the equation. So the first thing we need to be able to do is get to our x and our y intercepts from all three of the ways that we're going to see our information. Now, we could get our information from the standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. And if I want to get x all by itself, we need to be able to solve for x and y when y and x are 0. So here we've decided that b equals 0. So it goes away. So all we're saying is ax equals c. And if we divide each side by a, x equals c divided by a. And the same thing for when a equals 0 and it goes away. by equals c, and you divide both sides by b, you get y equals c over b. And when you stick numbers in here, it's a quick x equals c over a and y equals c over b. With our linear function, when we see y equals mx plus b, if we decide that x equals 0 and this whole thing goes away, it's really easy to find our y-intercept, and in fact that's why we like using this formula when we're graphing, because we can immediately find the y-intercept. Any line that you draw, the y-intercept is here, the x-intercept is here. And if you have 2 points, you can very easily draw the line. You don't have to make that chart anymore. That just takes a lot of time. So now let's try some together. We're going to find the x and the y intercepts of a few equations. The first one is 2x minus 4y equals 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say that x equals 0, and we're going to get rid of this one. So now negative 4y equals 4, and I'm going to divide each side by negative 4, and now y equals negative 1. If y equals 4, then 2x equals 4 and x equals 2. And when I graph that, it crosses the y at negative 1 and it crosses the x at 2. And there's my line. What if you're just given a graph and you're asked to find the x and y intercepts? Well, this crosses the y at 4, so I've got 0, 4, and this crosses the x at 6, so negative 6, so I've got negative 6, 0. These are my 2 points. This intercept is just 4, this intercept is just negative 6, so we're all set. What does this look like in a word problem? On page 308, the Sandia Peak Tramway in Albuquerque, New Mexico travels a distance of about 4,500 meters to the top of Sandia Park. Its speed is 300 meters per minute. The function f of x equals 4,500 minus 300x gives the tram's distance in meters from the top of the peak after x minutes. So I have to define that x equals minutes. So 300 times how many minutes I'm gone is going to be how far away from the peak I end up. Graph the function and find the intercepts. And what does each intercept represent? These are the questions we have to answer. So when I'm trying to figure something out, I'm going to go back to what's easy. And I know that after this many minutes, I'm going to be this far away from the peak. So Let's work out a couple of these just so we know what it means. If I'm 4,500 minus 300, that's 4,200 from the peak. If I'm 4,500 minus 600, that's 3,900 from the peak. And if I'm 4,500 minus 900, that's 3,600 from the peak. And 4,500 minus 3,000, just to throw another number in there, is 1,500. So what does this look like when we graph it? Well, again, x can't be negative, so I don't even need these three sections. So when x is 1, it's, and we're going to start at the top at 4,500. And when x is 1, and when x is 2, and when x is 3, what does each intercept represent? Well, right here I've got my y-intercept at 4,500. 4,500 means that 4,500 minus 300x, x is 0 because this doesn't exist, which means I am still 4,500 meters from the top, which means I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still at the very bottom of whatever they're climbing up, the mountain or the gorge or whatever. When I hit here, that ends up being 4,500 minus 4,500. That's where I've gone all of the distance. X is as big as it can get without ending up with negative distance, which doesn't make any sense. When x is as big as it can get, I'm going to hit that full 4,500. That means I'm actually 0 meters from the top. That means I've arrived at the top. So the x-intercept is going to be at the top and the y-intercept is going to be at the bottom. And what does x have to be in order for this to be 4,500? It's going to have to be 9. So this is going to be 9, 0, and this is 0, 4,500. Please pause here to do check it out numbers 1 and 2. Pause the video here, come back when you're done. Check it out number 1A asks you to find the x and the y-intercepts, and it draws you a picture, and its picture is on graph paper, so you can actually see that it crosses the y-axis at 3 and it crosses the x-axis at -2, so it's easy enough to find the intercepts. You're looking at the graph. With 1b, you have -3x plus 5y equals 30, and we're going to pretend that y is 0 here and x is 0 here, which leaves us to dividing both sides of the equation by the coefficient of our variable, and x is -10 and y is 6. Next, we have 4x plus 2y equals 6. This one is 0 here, this one is 0 here, dividing by our coefficients. X is 4 and y is 8. The school store sells pens for $2 and notebooks for $3. If we have an equation 2x plus 3y equals 60, and that describes the number of pens x and the number of notebooks y that you can buy for $60. So they have defined x and y for us. A, they want to graph the function and find its intercepts. I did it the long way. I found the x and the y and then decided that x was 0 and y is 0 and y equals 20 and x equals 30. And when y equals 20 and x equals 30, you end up with this purple line here. B asks what each intercept represents. When you're just buying y, that means that's the number of notebooks you can buy if all you're buying is notebooks for $60. And when all you're buying is pens for $60, that's what x equals 30 means. If we are graphing our linear equations using these intercepts, we're going to actually find the intercepts, graph those intercepts, and then draw the line that connects them. So we're going to take this to the next logical level. I'm just finding the intercepts, so I want two versions of this equation, and one of them y is going to be 0 and one of them x is going to be 0. And I'm going to divide by 2 here, so that x equals 4, and I'm going to divide by -4 here, so y equals -2, and I'm going to graph them when x equals 4 and y equals -2 and draw the line. That is my line, and that's how quick this can be. Let's try that with something that's not in standard form. 2/3 y equals 4 minus 1/2 x. I'm going to do 2 of them. And one of them we decide y is 0, and the other one we decide x is 0. Here we have 0 equals 4 minus 1/2 x. This is complicated to work with. Let's add 1/2 x to both sides. So 1/2 x equals 4, and I multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this, and x equals 8. Here, 2/3 y equals 4. I have 2/3 multiplied to my y. I want to get rid of that. I am going to divide by 2/3, which really means multiply by 3/2, because that makes those go away. And I end up with y equals, and I also have to multiply this by 3/2. And I'm going to cross cancel, and y equals 6. So now, my x equals 8 and my y equals 6, and I draw that line. And that's it. Try check it out number 3 to get a little bit of practice with this. So with check it out number 3a, we're going to first take out x and then y, and we end up with y equals -3 and x equals 4. When y equals -3 and x equals 4, we end up with a line that looks like this. And for check it out 3b, we have a slightly differently formatted equation. We make x 0 and then we make y 0. Y equals -2. We subtract 1/3 x from both sides. We divide by -1/3, which is multiply by -3 to both sides. And y equals -2 and x equals 6. And this is our line here. Okay? Your homework for this section starts on page 310. You're going to do numbers 13 through 21 odd, 22 and 23, 25 to 29 odd, 30 to 33 all. That should get you through this section. Please make sure you ask me any questions if you have them, and I will see you next time.